Coming to you from the island of Hawaii, it's the Big Island Beat Podcast. And now, here's your host, Steve Roby.
Aloha and welcome to the Friday edition of the Beat Podcast. Our special guest today is award-winning slack key guitar player and composer Makana. Aloha, Makana.
Aloha, Steve.
So good to hear your voice, my friend.
Man, it's been a long time, it seems like.
Yeah. Your last show at the Kahilu on the Big Island was back in March, and then the last time we spoke was back in May when you released your instrumental album called A Hawaii Interlude. How have you been? What have you been up to since then?
Well, I've been well. I'm very blessed. And I've, of course, like everyone else, made huge adjustments to my life and career. And so this is the longest I've been in one place that I can recall. But I've been using the time in a different way. I want to say productively, but not in my usual way. Usually over the past 2 years, I've produced nearly 300 songs and toured to all these different countries. So that's like the classic definition of productive. But what I've been producing now is my health and my education. And so I've taken this summer, I've got together a collection of a lot of different books that I've been wanting to read for years. I've just been reading a lot, and I've been taking a break so I can refresh and working on some longer term projects like the musical that I've been talking about for a few years. There's so much work to do on that. And then I have released a couple singles. I did release a song called Family this summer that is a very all ages friendly, really catchy song about loving your family even though they're hard to deal with. And it was kind of apropos because a lot of us got stuck, in one small place with our families for long periods of time. And then I released a song called Sadako and the Thousand Paper Cranes, which was on the anniversary, the 75th anniversary of the atomic bombings at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So I've been dropping little singles here and there, and I'm planning to release another single and some more, possibly another album soon. Just organizing everything right now and getting ready to put it out.
Wow, that's exciting news. Yeah. Hey, I was going to ask you about that play you've been working on for quite a while now. How is it progressing?
Well, it's going really well. And we had plans to go to Chicago to work with a university there. But then when the shutdown happened, everything got indefinitely postponed. So what we've decided to pivot. And because the musical is really, there's so many idiosyncrasies that only local people would I think, understand in terms of being able to workshop it and flesh out the parts and the roles that it's kind of been a blessing in disguise. We're going to actually start workshopping it in January here in Hawaii, probably on Oahu and maybe also on Hawaii Island. So, right now it's like fine-tooth comb process. Like a lot of it is written, just constantly going back and refining. And sometimes it feels really good to work under pressure. And if you give me a deadline, usually I do really well with that. But it's also a great feeling to have no pressure. And I don't know how long this lockdown is going to last and the pandemic is going to last. So it's really nice to not have that pressure and just to be able to revisit it as I feel inspired. I go into my studio in Honolulu, which is walking distance from my apartment, and I'll just sit in there with the piano and give myself a Broadway performance, and it's nice. A lot of fun, So I think by the time we get it to the point where we're workshopping it in front of an audience, I feel very confident that it's going to really strike a nerve that I don't think any piece of art out of Hawaii has done yet in terms of where it touches with the past, the present, and the potential future of Hawaii and its people.
I know you gave the audience at the Kahilu Theatre back in March a little sneak peek from it, and it was really intense. You were doing kind of spoken word, playing music, playing several parts of the play for the audience. So it was very interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of growing. I would say it's definitely growing beyond me being able to even convey it on my own. There's just so much. And one of the things I love about it is I've always been a solo performer. I've always just walked on stage with my guitar, play kiho'alu, Hawaiian slack key. And, it's like when you're writing a musical, you're writing for so many characters, you're creating a world. And it's exhilarating to be able to move beyond that first person approach to composing and just create a village. I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, well, something to look forward to. You sent us a few songs to play on the show today, and the first one we're going to hear is called Stressed. I think I know what this is about, but what's the story on this one?
So Stressed is a song that I'm probably going to release very soon. I think it's something that a lot of people can relate to. I've performed it a couple times on TV for various charities. Ah. It came to me earlier this year in the studio. Usually we go in and, I have rough ideas about what I want to do. And right there, I'll compose on the spot and produce it right there. And that's one of the songs that got produced. It was kind of started out as, me feeling like expressing what we all feel. Mm-hmm. But then halfway through the song, I kind of had said everything in terms of complaining and, it says, the beginning goes, I've been stressed, don't know how I'm going to pay the bills, stressed. Right now I could really use a mill. Like it's, something that everybody's thinking all the time. Like, and then, but I got through half of it and I was like, I don't want the whole song to be complaining. Like, and I really don't have anything else to complain about. What else could I do? And then I thought, wait a minute, why don't we go positive? And it was the perfect word that rhymed with stressed was blessed. And so the whole second of the half of the song transforms into this gratitude and really reframing your day. Yeah. And my hope is that it'll help people through those times when they feel overwhelmed and they can just put that song on. And I've tested it with some friends and I just love watching their reaction change. The first half of the song, they're like, oh my God, this is my life. And then the second half, they're like a little kid, like, wow, this is awesome. So really fun to take people by surprise like that.
All right. You said you plan to release that soon?
Yeah, I'm working on the release now.
All right, perfect timing. Well, let's play that now. Here's Stressed on the Big Island Beat.
I've been stressed, don't know how I'm gonna pay the bills, stressed. Right now I could really use a meal, stressed. I'm just sitting on my windowsill, wishing for the means just to make the ends meet. A little stress, it's a part of my everyday stress. Though I try to keep it at bay, stress is a part of my DNA. Cause even when I meditate, it never seems to go away. Stress, why don't you come with solutions now? You've been around since Confucius now. Has evolution failed? Stress, why don't you focus on blessings now? There's nothing I can do anyhow, so let me tip the scale. I've been blessed by the people that love me. I'm blessed by the good Lord above me. I'm blessed. Don't know how I'm gonna make it, but I know I'm gonna make it. That's enough and I'll take it. I'm blessed. It's so easy to forget that I'm blessed. Gotta change my mindset to feel blessed. Cause my attitude manifests. I know that the way I feel shapes the world I see is real blessed. Why don't you take a deep breath with me? Together we will exhale to see that life is on our side. Blessed, everyone has a hard time sometimes. So if you feel you're stuck in a bind, know you're not alone. When you're stressed, feeling like the world's caving in, stress, and your patience is paper thin, stressed. Focus on a single blessing and the thought will start caressing you until you remember you're blessed.
And we're back on the beat with our special guest today, Makana. Hey, Makana, when we were setting up this interview, you mentioned that you wanted to talk about the Hawaiian music renaissance period that happened in the 1970s and where it is now.
This is a very long history. We're going to try to condense it. But, when you look at what we call traditional Hawaiian music, which is so different than if we traveled back 200 years and listened to the musical forms of expression back then, it would be almost unrecognizable. it's a term. Hawaiian traditional music is a term that is kind of a loaded term. It means many different things, and in some ways it means nothing at all. So there's been all these different periods of influence in Hawaiian music. Prior to 1820, most of it was hula, chant, and percussion, and there were very few melodic instruments. Mm-hmm. And over the next century and a half, so many different world influences came in, whether it was the whaling ships and the shanties, whether it was the missionaries and their hymns, or the Victorian influence of the mo'i, the kings and queens, traveling to England and connecting with these other nations and having their influence come in and their melodies, or Henry Berger, the Prussian bandmaster that Kalakaua brought to Hawaii, or the vaqueros, who were the ones who really introduced the guitar to Kanaka, and that's where the tradition of slack key comes from, or the Portuguese immigrants who brought the ukulele, and it just goes on and on. So it's such a rich, incredible, diverse history. And then you have, of course, colonization and, the influx of all the different ethnicities onto the plantations. And so things aren't just Hawaiian anymore, and there's all these different ways of living changing and people being displaced. And over time, a lot of radical things happen to Hawaiian and their culture. One of them is, in official halls like government and school, the Olelo Hawaii, their language is actually outlawed for a certain period of time. And it becomes almost like culturally shameful to be Hawaiian because of such heavy colonizing influence. Mm-hmm. And so what happens in the early in the 60s and 70s is there's a renaissance, and it starts with the language. It starts with Larry Kimura and a lot of UH academics and different activists coming together and saying, hey, we need to take back our identity. And once the language starts to root, and this is where the Punana Leo schools come out of. And that's why today you have so many more fluent Kanaka, young Kanaka, than you did back then, because there was this revolution, there was this renaissance. With that, on the heels of that comes the music renaissance. And so you have groups like Eddie Kamai and the Sons of Hawaii with Dennis Kamakahi. You have Gabi Pahinui, who played with them and also had his own band. He brought in Rai Cooter and Maiku Musani Chillingworth and Ota Isaacs and all his sons, and Joe Gang Kupahu. And then you have Auntie Genoa Keave. You have Hui Ohana. You have the Sunday Manoa, Brothers Casamero, and Peter Moon, the great melodist. And you have all these different groups that are really playing music in a way that is intersectional. It has the language, it has the feeling of the culture, it honors the past and brings chant into modern form. But at the same time, there are all these, mainland America and other worldly influences coming into the music. I mean, if you listen to Sunday Manoa, you definitely hear influences of Crosby, Stills and Nash. Gabby was influenced by big band music in rock groups like Three Dog Night. Right. So these sounds start to come into Hawaiian music, and at the time, it's looked at by young people as really cool, and by some of the kupuna as like, this is radical, and what are you doing? And so over time, though, we look back, and now we call that traditional. So it's the perspective of understanding where the music has come from to understand what that means. And then after that period, through the 80s and 90s, the influence of reggae and Hawaiian music really comes in. And in the early days, it was, in my opinion, it was something that I really took a liking to with Brother Nolan and Kapena and Brother Walter and groups like this that really made it their own, made it Hawaiian, and had the themes that were relevant. And then, as we move forward in time, things get watered down. And you can see this in pop music as well, and other forms of music, as, things became more corporatized and, and accountants started to run the music business, and everything changed. Radio, I remember listening to the radio and thinking to myself, when are they going to start playing some of the new progressive things that are coming out? And they just, they wouldn't. And so now what we have today, in my opinion, is kind of a regressive trend in Hawaiian music, where things have become so much around the accompaniment of hula. And that in itself is not a bad or a good thing. It's an amazing thing to have such a popular demographic for hula. We have, all of Japan is so into hula. In Mexico, you have on the mainland, you have all these halau, even in Europe now. And that's wonderful. People trying to learn the culture of Hawaii and supporting it, taking interest, becoming the benefactors of the culture. Right. But if you follow the money and you start to see that there are a lot of more financial opportunities for Hawaiian musicians in Japan per se, then you start to see how that can play an influence on what becomes the music that's popular and played and that's requested and supported. And, to be more nuanced, like back in the 70s during this Renaissance, there were world-class instrumentalists like Gabby, Sonny, Ata, Peter Moon, Led Kaapana, Fred Puno, all these people, David Feet Rogers. And you had these players that could play on the level of Chet Atkins, they were just world-class. Nowadays, we have less and less of that. And if you look at the great ukulele players like Jake and Taimane, they're world-class players, but they're not playing Hawaiian music. And so who in Hawaiian music is perpetuating the instrumental side of things at the level? We have Ota-san. We have there are a lot of the ukulele guys that are continuing in the jazz, hapahole framework that has been popular through the 20th century. But my point is we face this crossroads in Hawaiian music where are we going to allow it to regress where it's just 3-chord strumming? Or are we going to maintain the tradition, the legacy of the complexity and the nuance that made our music really breathe, that really expanded? Because when you talk about Hawaiian music, you're talking about dozens of subgenres, not just backyard kanikapila, chalangalang strumming Hawaiian music. Yeah. You have slack keys, steel guitar, ukulele, you have chant, you have all these different things. And so the Hawaiian music renaissance is where I look to for direction, for guidance. This is where our music, in my opinion, reached its pinnacle. And we need to look back to that time and say, what were these people doing? And I'll tell you what I think they were doing. They were doing the banyan tree approach, which I always talk about, which is they were going back in time, nourishing the roots, bringing that back to life. But they were also looking forward, saying, hey, we got to be ourselves. Let's do this crazy thing. Hey, look at this. Try this. What? No one ever did that. Go, bro, do it. And there wasn't a fear around perpetuating tradition. There was an excitement. There was an inspiration. Yeah. And so that's what inspires me, that attitude.
Was there an event in the 1970s that triggered this Renaissance period? And I know what you mean about radio today. Unfortunately, back in the 70s, we did have, fortunately, I should say, not unfortunately, fortunately, back in the 70s, we had intelligent people behind the microphone that would talk about a song after they played it, open it up and inform the listeners what the music's about, who played on it, where it can be found. Now it's just back-to-back music with little stingers and blasts and things in between the songs, what I hear on radio. And I don't even think there's anybody behind the microphone on radio today after the morning show. So, but just to circle back there, was there something that triggered that Renaissance period in the 70s?
There was. It was the hokulea. The hokulea, voyaging canoe, was really something that renewed the pride in Hawaiian identity in a culture that was so heavily oppressive. The missionary culture and the American imperialism that came here was so oppressive to the native people here. And so for people to witness what the hokulea was able to achieve without modern technology and amenities was a great sense of pride. That and, like I said, the resurgence of Olelo, the language, I think, and I'm not a scholar, but this is, what I recall. Sure. Really inspired movement. And then, of course, you can also give credit to the American counterculture of the 60s and 70s that inspired young people of that time as well. Mm-hmm. Whether it was George Helm to stand up and lead, people in protecting Ko'olave from U.S. bombing, or whatever it was. It was a sense of, hey, you know what? Our parents were either shame or they just didn't have the chance, and you know what? We gotta use this opportunity and this time to stand up for who we are. And when I say we, I mean I'm not Kanaka. I'm born and raised here, but in sense of telling the story of the culture and what happened in that time, I think that's the attitude that young Hawaiians had, and you can see the evidence. In terms of the radio, I would say it's really, again, the culture of money and capitalism that has forced radio into this place. It's not like DJs don't want to do that. I think anyone who becomes a DJ probably has a sincere love for music and art. I think that this, when I remember when I was a kid, I used to go on the radio stations in Hawaii, and they would just say, "Hey, just come. I'll set you up on a mic. Just play for like an hour," and it was so loose and it was something with community, and it was more human. And community radio stations are like this still, but
right.
Then it became so automated and corporatized. And you have, again, you want to blame the FCC and the deregulation by Reagan and Clinton administrations, and that gets into politics.
Right.
But I mean, this is why I'm an activist, is because when we have this conversation about music and culture, the reason why we're saying, you're saying, well, I miss the good old days, is literally because of corporate lobbying for deregulation.
Right.
I mean, literally, that's the reason. We need to also see the linkage between policy and our everyday lives.
Well, the topic that you brought up about this Renaissance period seems like it would be. Here come the police.
I know. You know what it is? I live near Queens Hospital.
Oh, okay. I thought they were coming to shut you down or something. Anyway, it seems
coming to shut them down.
That's the way it should be. Anyway, I was going to say, the topic, while you were explaining it so well, seems like it would make a great documentary. Are there any people in your circle that are curious to making an informative documentary about this period? And
we've talked about this for years, and I was actually at one time working on something, and I've got some good friends who are deep historians into Hawaiian music. I mean, we could go for hours, and we can do more interviews about this subject, and I can bring in some great people, but that requires a lot of resource funding, and sure. I think in the right moment that will happen. Yeah,
it just seems like it would be a good time to revisit that and inform not only us who lived through that, but this younger generation too, of what was happening then and what is happening now. Let's get back to the music. The second song you sent over is called Aloha-Ka Manini. Do I have that right?
Aloha-Ka Manini. Manini is a fish, and then colloquially we say manini because it's a small fish. Sometimes we use the term manini to mean like small, like, bro, you that's all you're gonna eat. Plate, so manini. Like, it's just like it's tiny. But like Aloha-Ka Manini, the way that I recorded it is really a tribute to Gabi Pahinui Hawaiian Band. It's all of the instrumentation you hear is myself, except for the steel guitar, which is Jeff Auhoi. And he also played in Gabi's style. A lot of people remember Gabi Pops Pahinui as a Hawaiian slack key guitar master, which he is and was. But his passion and love beyond that was playing the steel guitar. And he had a very distinct sound on the steel guitar. He's probably my favorite steel player. I mean, it just drips with soul. The guy was just insanely gifted. You can hear that Jeff, we tried to achieve that tone on that. So there's a lot of, what defines that era of Gabi's music and slack key in that time, you can hear on this track, which is really fancy intros, really exciting and fancy outros, enlivening instrumental portions, and just a sense of, fun party energy.
I'll close out with that song, but before I let you go, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Oh, I just appreciate you being curious about our music and culture. Thanks for the opportunity to share.
I can't get enough of it.
Awesome.
Thanks for your time today, Makana. Stay safe, happy holidays, and be well.
Aloha.
Aloha.
You've been listening to the Big Island Beat Podcast. For more info, go to bigislandmusic.net and follow us on Facebook. Be sure to join us next week for another fun episode. Aloha!